Happy New Year, everyone. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome you to the first meeting, Organizational Development Standing Committee meeting of the Richmond City Council. The meeting will now come to order. Mr. Clerk, if you would provide the chamber emergency evacuation announcement.
Emergency evacuation announcement. Upon activation of the emergency alarm signal, all persons should immediately exit the building. Please use the exits to the left or right front of the council chamber or the east or west stairwell outside the rear doors of the chamber. Do not use elevators or escalators. After exiting the building, security will direct everyone down 9th Street to the assembly area located inside the former public safety building parking lot. Able persons should assist visually and hearing impaired visitors with exiting the building.
Mr. Clerk, thank you. Members, I have a motion for electronic communication participation pursuant to Rule 3D4B of Council's Rules of Procedure. Member Ellen Robertson has made a request to participate in this meeting via Microsoft Teams from 2103 Shallow Well Road in Mannequin, Sabbath, Virginia, as she is providing care for a family member. The committee members present must adopt a motion to approve Ms. Robertson's participation in this meeting by electronic communication means if it appears to us that her request complies with Rule 3D of Council's Rules of Procedure. At this time, pursuant to Rule 3D4D of Council's Rules of Procedure, I will solicit a motion for those council members physically assembled approving Ms. Robertson's participation in this meeting by electronic communication means.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you.
Committee is now voting on the motion to approve Ms. Robertson's remote participation via Microsoft Teams. Ms. Gibson? Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Trammell? Vice Chair Jordan?
Aye.
Chair Newbill?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Let's proceed with the, this point you need to do roll call again. And then we'll go next to the approval of minutes thereafter.
Yes, Madam Chair, all members of the committee are in attendance this evening except members Breton, Abubakar, Lynch, and Ms. Robertson has joined us online. She is present as well.
Thank you.
The minutes that
Let's proceed with the minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The minutes to be approved are from the Monday, December 1st, 2025 Organizational Development Standing Committee meeting. And if there are no corrections or amendments, then the minutes will be approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We'll move on to the reports. The first item on the agenda is the 2026 General Assembly Session Legislative Agenda Update. Ms. Devin Cabot, Two Capitals Consulting Vice President. Welcome.
Good afternoon, members of council. Happy New Year. My name is Devin Cabot. I'm with Two Capitals Consulting, and we serve as your on-the-ground lobbyist for the General Assembly session. I was asked to come and sort of check in with everyone, kind of provide a timeline, and I wanted to provide a cadence of sort of workflow for the next couple months, and we can go from there. So I'm going to try to do this pretty much in chronological order. So of course, tomorrow, January 6th, there's an important special election in the city that will help us determine the two openings we have on the state delegation for the delegation as they rep the city. So excited to get past the special election so then we know exactly who our state delegation is and we can work on building relationships with new members there. First day of session is this coming Wednesday, January 14th, with again a week-long festivities celebrating the start of session and then the inauguration of the three statewide officials. The swearing-in ceremony is Saturday, January 17th. So far, up until now, there have been about 250 bills that have dropped in the system. We expect another approximately 3,000 bills that we will start to see coming online in the next 1 to 2 weeks. That's when the bulk of bills will be dropped. All of those bills will have to be through their chamber of origin by what we call crossover, which is February 17th. That is also around the time that we will see the first version of the House and Senate budgets, respectively. And then, of course, our 60-day long session will adjourn sine die on March 14th, with the reconvened or veto session happening on April 22nd. So basically, the bulk of this work around the General Assembly session will happen in the next 60 to 70 days. We have seen a handful of bills introduced. I mentioned about 250 have been introduced so far. A handful of bills on affordable housing and voting or the administration of elections. We are going to start this Friday providing a detailed bill tracking list to you with a brief written report of the week's activities. The report that you see this week will kind of be the first one. It won't be complete. There's going to be a lot that we don't know and a lot of bills that aren't introduced yet. But by the time we get to next Friday's bill tracking, it should be pretty comprehensive. And our strategy here usually is to kind of cast a wide net in the beginning to figure out the whole universe of bills that are out there that may impact the city. And then we can narrow that down as we go and kind of prioritize and figure out where we want to spend the bulk of our time. On the city's specific priorities, we're starting to receive drafts back from DLS on different bills that we've asked legislators to put in for us. A few of them have dropped, but most of them are still in the draft stage. We are working with legislators on patronage to kind of make sure we know who is putting in what bills. There are a lot of bill limits. The bill limits in the Senate this year are proving to be a challenge. So I just want to set that expectation. We do, expect to have a good handful of bills that I know the city is going to want to engage on. And I'm eager to identify opportunities for City Council to engage with the legislative process in the General Assembly building, whether that's lobbying members or providing testimony on specific bills. We're not able at this point to put a lot of specificity around that, mostly because we don't know the full universe of bills yet, and we don't have committee assignments with a lot of 15 plus new people in the legislature. We will likely get committee assignments the first or second day of session, which will help us kind of identify, right, who are our targets, who we need to talk to, and when. So I'm eager to get session started. I feel like this is the day before the marathon where you're just eagerly awaiting, but we need to get in the running here so that I can bring you more specificity over specific bills, specific timelines, and actions we can take going forward. That's all I've prepared if anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions for Ms. Cabot at this time? Councilmember Gibson.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you so much for the presentation and updates. I guess my question perhaps might be most directed to our leadership, but just want to understand where we'll have these conversations. Is the plan to have these conversations in these organizational development meetings? I mean, given the timeline of GA and the cadence of our meetings, I want to make sure that we're able to respond in a time-effective manner. I want to float the concept of having perhaps a committee established during a GA, perhaps obviously not this year, but looking forward, perhaps next year, so that there is a body that can provide some guidance and in real time. This is, our schedule is not aligned with the pace at which decisions are made, and I want to make sure that that we are structured in a way that we can be most responsive at this critical, during this critical time.
Thank you. So certainly OD meetings, but those are only once a month. And so as needed, informal if we're needing to have some of that time allocated to address the strategies as we become clear about where the papers are and strategies in terms of council outreach that, Ms. Cabot would like to direct us on, that would be, we can't miss the opportunity. We can't wait. And then if we need to have a special meeting, we can call that. But I think the cadence certainly, the informals that are every other week if we're needing to, the OD, and then any special outreach we need to do, we can schedule that. To your point in terms of subsequent year, I'll ask, going to ask consideration. I don't know if that's something could come up under GovOp as opposed to a whole separate committee, but to your point, we'll certainly take a look at that and see what form that can take. Because we will need to have, and we've talked about this, the strategy. It's one thing to have the priorities and to send those over. It's another thing to have the strategy then that City Council will be engaged in terms of outreach to our elected GA members to advocate for those items that we're taking over. So, yes. Vice President Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. Just to piggyback on that question, I think it'd be helpful for you to speak to your working framework with the mayor's office and administration, and perhaps that's something that their government operations point of contact can come up and speak to as well. But we're just one half of the advocating over across the street with two caps. So understanding that fuller picture of collaboration, I think probably would be helpful to the body. Thanks.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, we have been meeting with the mayor's administration and various members, agency and department leads on different issues, gathering the information we will need to properly analyze legislation, and then also to provide the context and backstory on the priorities that you've identified. I meet fairly regularly with Ruth and RJ. We usually, to coordinate what's going on and what we're all focused on. And I anticipate that will continue through session. There will be a lot of informal conversations that will need to happen because of the pace at which the legislative process moves, as you've mentioned. But I hope to keep in regular communication with both Ruth and RJ throughout the process, so that if there's something I need to highlight as like, this looks important to me, it can be raised to your attention.
Thank you. Ms. Gibson, and then I'll come back.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up on the discussion of, looking forward, I would welcome any input you can provide regarding other municipalities and what type, how they structure, this time period and whether they have a separate committee or whatever the approach that they take. When I was on the school board, that existed. And I was also curious what the documentation we should expect in terms of getting, updates. Is it something that you have like a tracker? Is that something that you share with the body with kind of weekly, or just, I'm just kind of curious what to keep an eye out for?
Sure. Yes, we will provide a weekly bill tracking sheet that will be fairly comprehensive, and then we can whittle it down or add comments, prioritize bills as session moves, and a weekly written report that kind of summarizes the actions from that past week, so that you will get that every Friday, close of business, in preparation for the work we have to do for the following week.
Thank you. And then just one final thing, after this is, done and decisions are final, or the bills have been finalized, I'm thinking about last year and the case where the city ended up with the $5 million bill. And I'm just wondering what the approach will be, if some other legislation comes up that maybe is not on our radar, or that there could be implications to the city. What will be the process to ensure that there's not a surprise for something like that again?
Sure. Certainly, the hope is that there are no surprises at all. So my team reads through every bill. We kind of triage and categorize to try to figure out what may impact the city. And the same with the budget. We read the budget very thoroughly, item by item. And so it's generally my practice that if I see something that implicates the city in any way, or has maybe it doesn't mention the city, but it has a profound effect, I usually raise that in real time that same day to internal folks so that those conversations can start happening. But I'm hopeful that there will be absolutely no surprises, and that we'll be able to kind of flag everything early. No promises, right? We won't see the budget until mid-February. But something to keep in mind is that the legislative process is iterative. It's slow and deliberative, and there's lots of versions, and it's constantly moving and morphing and changing. So you do have to kind of keep an eye out that somebody doesn't slip something in later that could have an impact that you're not anticipating.
Yes, Ms. Gibson?
I'm sorry, I just had one last point. In the documentation that you provide, do you include also potential like fiscal impact for the city? And when I say that, I'm actually thinking also really specifically about the schools where, there are, decisions that could be made that could very well impact the school district's finances, good and bad. And I'm just wondering if that's something that can be flagged, as we are also, right on the heels of this, working on our budget development. It would be helpful to keep those types of potential changes on our radar.
Sure thing. I am not able to provide budget numbers as to how these things, I would rely on staff for that, city staff for that. But what we do have are fiscal impact statements for each bill that are statewide. They're broad, so they won't be city specific, but they can provide some insight generally into, where we think the impacts will be.
Great. So perhaps, if the city might have a process that it pertains to the impact locally, that would be helpful to understand. But thank you so much.
Ms. Gabbard, thank you. I look forward to the ongoing communication, and especially as we're collaborating this year very closely with the administration, we're going over with that single packet of priorities. And so look forward to, as soon as you are made aware of any challenges or concerns, certainly during the 60-day period, but we certainly appreciate and await your strategic guidance on our involvement.
Yeah, no problem. I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to do it. I look forward to it. Thank you.
The very next item, I think we have our council chief of staff, Mr. Warren, will bring that forward. This is our fiscal year 2026 budget review schedule update.
Good afternoon. May it please the committee, R.J. Warren, Council Chief of Staff. Yes, I'm here to present to you the proposed budget review schedule for fiscal year 2027. And I'm hopeful that it will give you the time and structure need for constructive deliberations in the spring. As you can see, here's the schedule I provided to you all, and provided a copy to the clerk's office to put online. As you can see, on March 2nd, we will begin with the OD meeting of March, where Richmond Public Schools will be asked to be present to discuss their budget with City Council, in addition to council agencies. At that point, the school's budget should be an online discussions posting, part of the record, and can be discussed before the city's budget is introduced at that time. It's their proposed budget, and then council agencies as well. We report to council, so we should be able to be available to provide you any information in a discussion regarding our proposed budgets. We will then kick things off on the 11th with the mayor presenting his proposed budget. And per the discussions during the budget review task force at that meeting, it was discussed that the mayor would present the ceremonial introduction of the budget ordinances, followed by the CAO being present to address any immediate questions council will have at that time. That will kick off our March budget work session schedule, where we will have 4 dedicated work sessions covering major areas. 1, planning and economic development on March 18th. Finance and administration on March 23rd. That'll be the same day that we have our first initial budget public hearing that night at the March 23rd formal meeting. We will then have operations present at a work session on March 25th, followed by a kind of double work session that's going to take place at one time. That's going to involve human services and capital improvement projects. We're going to cancel the April OD meeting and just have one long work session on 1 o'clock on that Monday. You will note too that we are avoiding any work sessions during our RPS spring break to assist with families, staff, the public that have family commitments during that week. We will get back on the 6th, and that will then have that work session and start the amendment process following the next day. Amendments will be due from council members on Tuesday, April 7th. That will give us time to post and distribute them to both other council members, city administration, and the public by Thursday, April 9th. And that April 9th posting will lead into the Monday, April 13th formal meeting. Let me see here. Yes, that will be where we have a public hearing on proposed amendments put forward by council. We did something similar on the fly this past year during budget deliberations. So this year we're officially putting on the schedule that we will have a public hearing on proposed amendments put forward by council members on April 13th. We will have 4 amendment work sessions during April, the 13th, the 15th, the 20th, and then hopefully come into final consensus on amendments on the 22nd. So Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday. Those are 4 work sessions in 2 weeks, but it's easier to cancel a meeting than trying to have to schedule one on the fly in April. If things go well and we don't need the 3rd or 4th one, that would be great. We can easily cancel, and you guys can go ahead and have it on your schedules. The same with staff as we move forward. Then, if we get to final consensus by the 22nd, the plan would be for council to approve amendments on April 27th at the formal meeting, to then amend and continue them to the first formal council meeting in May 11th, where they will have the final public hearing. This will be the 3rd public hearing on the budget, and hopefully final adoption that evening. This will be done before the required deadlines of RPS budget being approved by May 15th and the city budget being adopted by May 31st. And you'll notice that in this timeline, there are some key features here. First is we've built adequate time in between major phases of this so that you're not rushed from one stage to the next. Second, we've tried to schedule some of these work sessions on days that you all are already here in the chamber and available. Monday and Wednesdays it seems to be the council work days where I see most of the council members in the building, so that we're working to have our work sessions on those 2 days. And third, we've kind of built a structure that's going to be well planned out but flexible if we have to deal with any last minute changes without causing too much chaos at that moment. I will note in relation to that, one thing I've kind of been asking throughout the budget review task force meeting over the summer and this year is asking that when the ordinance be introduced for the Richmond Public Schools budget, that it be a separate ordinance. I'm asking city administration for that because that will allow the flexibility if something were to occur and you need the rest of May to address the general fund, the city budget. You could always adopt the RPS budget by May 15th and still have 2 more weeks if you absolutely had to. Hopefully we don't. Hopefully we're all done by May 11th. But if you have the charter gives you the time, you should have the time. And the schedule, I believe, gives you enough time for proactive deliberation. And some key points I wanted to provide to you at this time to be aware of is that the Council Chief of Staff's office is meeting weekly to work on this budget and budget preparations. And internally over the next 30, 60 days, we're going to be working on our own kind of SOPs, standard operating procedures, for how these amendment and budget work sessions will proceed. This will include how the work sessions proceed. For instance, presentations. I'm going to suggest to you all that there's a 20-minute or 30-minute cap on presentations. So you all can use the time to discuss the budget with city administration. The way I see it is this clock right here, it's going to start counting and you give 20 or 30 minutes. And once that clock hits 20 or 30, you guys can go ahead and hopefully start asking questions at that time. We're going to work on SOPs, how we handle the processing and voting on amendments during the amendment portions, and how we handle documents, posting online for both enough time for you members to review them, giving city administration adequate time to respond, putting them online for the public to review those. And I'm going to be engaging with you all over the next few days to get your feedback and preferences and how we engage with city administration over the next few weeks on your own individual budget priorities and what kind of early game plan we can do with them to identify where those matters might already be included in the budget development. That's what I have at this time, and I'd be happy to address any questions that you all may have at this moment. This is a draft. I'm waiting for y'all's feedback over the next few days before finalizing this thing, and then I'll work with the city clerk to post these dates online and make them official.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Councilmember Jones, question?
Thank you, Mr. Warren, and thank you for the timeline. I have a couple of questions or maybe comments, I don't know, but either way. The first one is where you mentioned about the proposed amendments and then like the work sessions. Is there a way that we can make clear what those work sessions actually are? And I mean that for the public, right? Because we know internally, like the work sessions is kind of going through different elements, I guess, of the budget. But you have folks that may not necessarily want to come to the work session, but is still interested and actively engaged with the budget. And I think the work sessions are the ones that tend to become a little chaotic. And so will we be actually creating, and maybe this is part of your SOPs, like what is going to happen during those work sessions? It tends sometimes to be like a free fall. And so I'm just trying to like get a sense of what should we be telling people in terms of when they want to actively participate as a part of the process.
Yeah, so as you can see, they are, the budget work sessions in March are categorized by kind of DCAO portfolios. So people know when human services is going to be discussed. People know when operations are going to be discussed. So so you'll go into that well in advance, and staff too, what's going to be discussed that day. So we'll need to come up with an idea of, I'll work with the city administration of what they hope to present at that time. You know, after March 11th, these items are introduced. The budget ordinances will begin our research and either proposing questions for you all or receiving your questions to do analysis for, so you can be ready after that presentation to begin asking your questions. You know, we'll have a little bit more insight on budget requests from city departments after January 15th when they're posted online. So we'll be going and we're going to be able to go ahead and start working on that. But the actual finalized structure, we'll work on that and get feedback from you all over the next couple of weeks but that's my plan at the moment, is that it would be start with the presentation. You should already have questions well in advance that you will want to ask at that time. And I believe that.
That's the goal also for the council amendment budget sessions as well, right?
Correct. Yeah, there should be well established before the budget introduces how we're going to approach the amendment process in April.
Yeah. And then follow up, Madam Chair. What I guess also is in between that, we also know, and we kind of talked a little bit about this, but like we know that there are several conversations that also happen in between, you know, whether it's the first round of work sessions or the second round of work sessions. I guess what I'm trying to get at, let me just get straight to the point. I guess I'm trying to get at, like, I recognize the timeline and information and keeping us ahead. I'm trying to ask the question of what is going to be different than what has typically happened because we get here, because we have on this every year, like the schedule and all that, and then we get here and somehow it just seems like, you know, and I'm not trying to like beat a dead horse. I'm just trying to also understand for myself, like what is going to be different that we are going to actually see true engagement, true community participation as a part of this budget process and not just council and administration talking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's what I'm trying to really, I guess, get a better understanding of.
Yeah. Well, we're having 3 public hearings this year to help have the public feel engaged in it. One of the reasons I wanted to get this out in January is so the public is well aware before March of how the spring schedule is going to work. I enjoyed my relationship with the administration at this time in the mayor's office on these initial kind of conversations about preparations for the budget. I feel a strong connection there, and I think that's going to work well as we get closer to it. And speaking of budget work sessions, I sat through, this will be my 8th budget. I've sat right here, listening to and writing minutes regarding several of these budget work sessions that worked well, did not work well. Obstacles that council had to deal with, city administration as well. And I feel confident that I can help mitigate repeats of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sorry. And then with the, how specifically like during the budget session where you have a lot of groups that want to meet with council members and talk about, funding and whether or not they've been funded. Like, are we looking at trying to, I don't want to use the word standardize, but like if 5 or like if all 9 of us are, being asked about funding that was in the budget, are we looking to incorporate like some of that community input into the process versus every council member having to meet individually to talk about? And I'm also wondering for our priorities as well, are we looking like across to look at what's maybe duplicative or?
Yeah, no, I'll take the direction from council. If that's something that they would want to centralize within the staff's office, receiving feedback from the public, and that's what the council desires, we'll put our efforts towards that. So that's something we can discuss over the next few weeks in January.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is something that we should maybe think about just since we, yeah, and another one was the participatory, but I guess we don't have information on that. Like, I want to know how, if we know yet, how are they going to be integrated in this process as well? Because again, that is the community and that is, well, they are, the participatory committee for the community. And so like, how are we planning to, like, are they just going to be getting the feedback on behalf of the on behalf of the community, and then we have to bring our own, like, just some clarity around those pieces that are very important as it relates to like community engagement, not just the public hearing, because there's a lot of people that can't get to the public hearing. So I'm thinking about people that can have input beforehand.
Understood.
Thank you.
So, and I would ask if there are specific items you want to make sure we address in the context of this work, that we get those to RJ. And one that specifically, and certainly have had some conversation in terms of PB and the interface with the council process. And so the administration, I know, is well aware and certainly open to that and figuring out what that will be, which will address some of the concern that's raised in terms of public involvement in the process before we get so far down in terms of the scheduling. So if you would include that in your discussions with the administration, that'd be really helpful. And then we'll get to you any additional items. And Councilwoman Gibson.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you. I just want to, emphasize, I mean, if there's anything, what I am incredibly appreciative of is that there is time for us to work on the amendments, I mean, so I think it is definitely progress that the mayor is submitting the budget sooner on March 11th, and that we have, I mean, I kept saying it last time, we had 10 days. And so in this revised timeline, counselors have until the 7th, so about a month to really be able to, I think, be more intentional and give more, thoughtfulness to incredible, important work. So thank you for addressing some of those low-hanging fruit. I think that could make this a better process. So thank you. I wanted to. So our office is working on, some documentation requests, and so I wanted to highlight those. But I will also submit these, or we will submit these formally, so that there it is in writing. But I wanted to highlight some of those things. Actually, first is a question is to know what the timing is for the complete audit, the CAFR as it once was called. It's called the A something or other, but we know what we're talking about. So if we could find out exactly when that will be published, that will be helpful to know. I want to also request, because last year in the budget, we did make requests for documents and that didn't, we weren't able to get them. So my hope is that by making these requests sooner and by formalizing the request, that perhaps we can, get that information. I think it would be very helpful to receive the payment registry from fiscal year 2026. This is the check registry, so this is information that is supposed to be public already, but it would be very helpful to have that for for the fiscal year 25, for the completed year, so that we can see exactly, kind of a little bit more granularity, how payments have been made. So that is the payment registry from fiscal year 25. Also wanted to, and some of these are things too that I've requested, as we were discussing the property tax rate, but it would be also very helpful to understand how new construction is looking and projections for revenue from new construction, which isn't included in the standard land book that we see. So that would be helpful to get for both the last fiscal year, but also any projections to understand how this year is looking from a revenue standpoint and an expense standpoint, would be really very helpful to have. Vacancy reports is something that counselors are often looking at with detail as we're looking for opportunities and where revenue could potentially be repurposed. And so getting those comprehensive revenue vacancy reports ahead of our amendments would be really helpful. And then finally, this is piggybacking on Councilor Jones's point regarding the people's budget. And I understand the people's budget the process that we went through last year, we won't go through that again until next year. But this year, it would be very helpful to get status updates in terms of, now that the administration, I presume, is going through more formalized pricing exercises, and they've likely received some more estimates, and there perhaps is more information about timing, but it would be helpful to kind of just get an update on where things are at with the projects that obviously the community is really very invested in. And then the final couple thoughts I had are with the councilor amendments that are made. My request is that councilors see this request as something that will go public, and so that the form, that whatever the documents that are submitted by councilors for these amendments, that they're developed in such a way that it's understood that these would be public documents, so that there is more transparency with the public in terms of what the requests that are made. And in full transparency, the reason why I'm requesting this is because the thing that's difficult in this process is that we are asked to be held to finding where we're going to fund the suggestions that we make. And so I think it's important that all counselors are held to the same standard. And if we're going to suggest that there's an addition made somewhere, those that we're also suggesting that there is a cut that's made somewhere. And so I think that the more folks that are looking at the budget with that type of eye, the more likely we will identify opportunities where there could be perhaps some efficiencies made. The other reason why I think that having as much transparency to these documents is so that there's more visibility to where there is consensus. And I think that could really streamline the process as we are moving forward as a body and workshopping and figuring out, where there's agreement. If we can see where folks are at and the public can see, I think that could really help, continue the process forward in an effective way. The other, thinking back to last year, another point I believe that there was some friction was in the initial presentation that the mayor made to the body with presenting the budget. If I recall, the expectation was that we weren't really going to say anything, and so it would be helpful to know, one, is it when I see that the budget is going to be submitted on the March 11th or whenever, March 11th. And I know we revised a new paper on this, so I apologize that I don't recall the details. But if that's going to be done in a public meeting with counselors present, can we set the expectation that it's okay to ask questions? Is there time, would it make sense for us to have the formal presentation after we've had a minute or two to look at it? But I just want to make sure that there's clarity. I do think that when the body comes to a meeting, that allowing the body to ask questions, should be standard protocol. And so, that's my perspective on that. But I want to make sure that there is a clear understanding about the cadence for that meeting, which is a meeting that gets, a lot of visibility. And clearly, there are many questions that people have and understandably wanting to kind of get things going as soon as possible makes sense. And then finally, in terms of just timing, the sooner we can figure out exact times for things would be helpful. But I appreciate, all the work that's been done to really nail down. I think 3 public hearings is wonderful. And so again, thank you for all of that, and looking forward to, more robust discussions in the months ahead.
To briefly respond to that, some of the requests for information you shared, we've already begun those conversations with the administration on things we know you guys are going to want to know, probably in January and February, before March. So that is taking place. In regards to I'll have to get final confirmation, but there seemed to be an appetite for that type of availability for questions when the budget task force was discussing things over the summer, but I'll have to get final confirmation on that before March 11th.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And Ms. Gibson, you will be sure to get those items. I'm sure RJ got some listing of them, but to make sure the items you want to make sure that are included in terms of requests, but also certainly the conversation with the administration about how we'd like to proceed in terms of that exchange that you're asking about. So both ends. With that, Vice President Jared.
Thank you so much, President Newbill, and thank you, Mr. Warren, for the presentation and all the work of the folks in City Council, Chief of Staff's office, budget team. I just had a few questions. One would be, looking back at the recommendations from the task force, there were a couple of things here, many of which I already see reflected in this document. It's awesome. But some follow-up items, wondering if you had any updates on, and I'll just list them in rapid fire and then you can respond. Okay, so the first one is, has the mayor come up with a schedule for his town halls on the budget, if indeed that's something he's still going to do. We had referenced that they were interested in doing public town halls in January and February, that they would initiate and organize from administration. Do we have an update on the RPS formula, non-D grant process? Are we still going to try and do a resolution jointly with administration on our joint priorities? I know we didn't window them down as much as we were hoping to at our budget kickoff, but in the task force presentation, we had said 5 to 7. Is that something that we think is still, worthwhile to pursue? And then my final thing I'll say is super excited that you guys are working on SOPs. I know a lot of what has made some of these meetings chaotic is just each time we're kind of reinventing the wheel. And sometimes just the way the documents are presented in and of themselves is challenging. So to the extent we can formalize that is great. I know everyone puts their best foot forward in effort trying to get us information as we're asking for it in real time. So there's an inherent limitation to that. But anyway, thank you. I'll pause and let you respond.
Yep. The town halls are going to take place, I believe, over the next couple of weeks. The mayor's team is supposed to be sharing with you all that schedule. RBS funding formula, I'm going to have to get some more information on that and from city administration provide you all on that. The non-D process, I believe we plan to have an update presented on the current process that is concluding and the new process moving forward to be presented to you all at the February OD meeting. So there'll be opportunity for some more discussion on that topic there. And then resolution at this point, I don't know if that'll be taking place or not as we get closer to March 11th. And then the SOPs, yes, it's going to be easier for us all to hold each other to a standard. If we have one, if it's online, the people in this room will have to hold each other accountable. The public will hold us accountable to them. And, it's kind of like Robert's Rules of Order. They should help with our meetings. So that's kind of the quick rapid fire response to you. And I also appreciate you thanking staff on the third floor. I'll go through the day and I'll think I've accomplished something legislatively, policy wise. And I'm feeling like we just accomplished something. And then I'll look up and it's the staff, Julie Caldwell, especially at the door, asking if I'm ready to talk budget and get back on topic of the city budget. So we're consistently working on that and I appreciate them as well.
RJ, I want to say thank you again for the report. Is certainly thanking staff who have fed into this. I really do want to make sure that we have the ongoing communication with the administration, which you clearly suggested that we have moving forward, but especially getting information back and getting it to council in advance of the meeting so that
Yes.
There are questions there can almost be sent back to the administration in advance of the meeting so that we come prepared to have those responses and to have the answers. So with that, I have asked and members will submit to you any the items they've asked to have also included. And so if you will be on the lookout or send a reminder to members, that'd be helpful. And then if you would, while you're there, just update in terms of standing committee and where we are or will be as we move forward with reporting there.
Yeah, for the OD meeting, there's no really report to provide you all in December committee meetings. No meetings occurred during the month of December. But to talk on that subject, moving forward, the policy team on the third floor has been working with committee chairs and members and city administration to go ahead and proactively schedule the next 6 months of presentations for each of your committees. Proposals have been submitted to the members of each committee, getting initial feedback from city administration. The goal of January is at each of these committee meetings to kind of basically get the final sign off that the 6 month schedule is good to go. And I plan to provide you all with the draft this week that reflects all the committees, not just ones that you are members of, just so you all are aware of what the body is doing. And that's the only update I have on that.
Thank you. With that, members, the agenda for this meeting is concluded. Do we have any other questions and/or comments? Seeing none, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you again, everyone.